Hello guys, welcome back to MJ School of Mining and Geology. In today's session, we are dealing with the silica polymorphs. So we're gonna basically be looking at things like alpha quartz, beta quartz, tridymite, cristobalite, and many others. Right. So basically what we're gonna be looking at is we're going to check at what we call the dependence of structure on the temperature. So for example, at high temperatures, the atoms of these silica polymorphs, they tend to move away from each other. And then when they move away from each other, they basically cause the crystal structure to become more open. Okay. And then when we say it's more open, we're saying it's less dense. Okay. So basically, that's what we're going to be looking at today. But before that, please don't forget to like, share, comment, and hit the notification button below so that you get notified once we upload new content. All right. So basically, this is what we call a silica. In this case, we're looking at the quartz. All right. How do we know that this is a quartz? We saw this, a glassy or vitreous last year, and of course, what we call the conchoidal fracture, which here we are looking at what we call a clear quartz. But now, there is a huge difference between what we call a silica and what we call the quartz. All right. So in one of our videos, we were looking at the quartz as the framework structure or 3D structure. And if you haven't yet visited our video on silica classification, or not silica, but silicate classification, you are more than welcome to do so. All right. So quartz polymorphs will be looking at things like citrine, smoky quartz, amethyst, chalcedony, jasper, tiger's eye, and many others. All right. But now the silica polymorphs, we're going to be looking at the polymorphs which they change or they transform due to the effect of pressure or the temperature. We're going to be looking at the alpha quartz, beta quartz, the tridymite, cristobalite, coesite, and many other things. And these polymorphs, they change when you change pressures and temperatures. Okay, and so of all silica polymorphs, one variety of a substance that can exist in a number of physical form. Okay, quartz is the only stable form at normal ambient conditions, and all other silica polymorphs will, given sufficient time, eventually transform into quartz. Okay, so they're trying to transform when you change the pressures and temperatures to or basically when you're changing the temperature to transform into the quartz. The other polymorphs are stable at different and sometimes very special conditions, mostly high temperatures and high pressures, but some of them may also form at low temperatures and pressures under condition where quartz is stable. So we're going to be looking at these silica polymorphs, and from these silica polymorphs, quartz is the most stable one. And then the rest of these polymorphs, they change or they transform, okay, into a more stable structures when you are changing the temperatures and pressures. Okay, all the polymorphs of silica are based on the structure of silicon tetrahedron. Okay, we know silicon tetrahedron is wherein we're having silicon at the center or in the middle, surrounded by 4 oxygens, and then we call that a silicon tetrahedron. And I like to call that what you call a pyramid. And if you visited our video on silica classification, you now understand that to form different silicate minerals, the silicate minerals will be formed based on how the pyramid or silica or what you call silicon tetrahedron, okay, get to bond with each other. All right. So in the 3-dimensional framework thus formed, okay, every silicon bonded to 4 oxygen ions, and each of the oxygen atom is bonded to 2 silicon ions. Okay. Chemically, the varieties of quartz are normally very pure. Okay, so they are very pure, like this one that I showed you. Okay, this is very pure. But if you get to get to introduce things like titanium, aluminum, and other things, they become impure. Okay, that's why a little aluminum 3 plus can substitute for SiO4 plus. Okay, with the charge balance normally being maintained by lithium or sodium ions. Quartz, tridymite, and cristobalite are the three main forms of crystalline silica. Okay, we're going to be looking at quartz, tridymite, and the cristobalite. And usually from this, we usually introduce what we call the alpha quartz, the beta quartz, the alpha tridymite, the beta tridymite. Okay, these minerals have a distinct crystal structure, meaning the arrangement of atoms in each is different. Okay. Remember, what is a polymorph to start with? Polymorphs are the minerals which have got the same chemical formula or chemical composition, but structurally, these minerals, they differ. So, all of these minerals, they are silica, but obviously, structurally, they will differ depending on the temperatures and pressures. All right. Each of these silica forms has a well-defined stability field under equilibrium conditions. They've got places or the conditions in which they are comfortable and they are stable. Okay, but if let's say a mineral is stable under low temperature, if you were to expose that mineral to intense temperatures, the mineral will become unstable, will become uncomfortable, and then what will happen is the atoms, they will rearrange themselves in such a way that now they become stable in those new conditions, and then now the mineral when the atoms or the internal structures start to change, when the atoms start to rearrange themselves due to intense temperature and pressures, okay, then the minerals will form a new structure. So that's why chemically the mineral will still be the same, but structurally it will differ. So these minerals change the structure to now, to be able to withstand the new temperature conditions. Then we say in those conditions, it becomes stable. Okay, that's why we say this means that each form is stable under specific temperatures and pressures. But now, if you were to expose these minerals to temperatures which they're uncomfortable in, then they will start to what we call transform. Okay, structurally they will start to transform. And what happens during transformation? The atoms, they rearrange themselves. The transformation from one phase like quartz to another, like tridymite, is described as somewhat sluggish, meaning it doesn't happen quickly. It takes time, all right? It's not something that it can be sharp, all right? It takes time, all right? This suggests that it takes time for one form of silica to change into another when temperatures or pressure changes. Okay, it's not changes which happens quickly. It takes time to happen. Okay, despite this slow transformation, the higher the temperature forms of silica, like cristobalite, can exist metastably at low temperatures. Okay, meaning they can remain stable for a time, even though they are not the most stable phase at those lower temperatures. They are not comfortable at low temperatures, but they can withstand low temperatures for quite some time. But remember, this thing, it doesn't happen quickly. So for some time, it can withstand those temperatures, but with time, it will feel like, no, I'm not comfortable in these conditions, and then it will transform. Okay, so essentially, they can survive below their typical temperature range for a while, but eventually they will transform into a more stable phase where they are basically they are comfortable. Okay. For example, let's look at a mineral quartz. Okay. A common a mineral which is also made up of what we call silicon dioxide. Okay, so we know quartz at high temperatures, the structure will become more open. okay, the structure will become more open at high temperatures. Why does it become more open? Because it wants to allow more space between the atoms, which would result in the decrease in density. Okay, why that? This is because when you have what you call the increased thermal vibrations, the thermal vibrations would normally push the atoms further apart, okay, leading to the less compact arrangement of those atoms. So the more you increase the temperatures, the atoms start to jump or vibrate, and then when they jump, they they move further away from each other, all right? And then now it makes them the density of that particular mineral to become less, what you call less dense, all right? That's what you call the open structure, okay? During phase transformation, okay? Okay, both quartz, tridymite and cristobalite have alpha and beta varieties. Like I said, we've got alpha quartz, beta quartz, alpha, tridymite, beta, and so on. Okay, these terms refer to different forms of polymorphs of each, or different forms of polymorphs of each silica type that have slightly different crystal structure. Chemically, they will still be the same. They will still consist of what you call SiO₂, but structurally they differ because of the atoms rearranging themselves. Okay. The variations between the varieties of polymorphs, for example, between alpha and beta quartz, are less significant. So the alpha and beta, okay, they are less significant, okay, or the difference between the alpha cristobalite and the beta cristobalite, the variation will be less significant, okay, than the differences between the different polymorphs themselves, like the difference between quartz and tridymite, or the difference between tridymite and the cristobalite. That difference will be, significant, but the differences or the variations between the alphas and betas is less significant. Okay, because the changes between the varieties alpha to beta involves less dramatic differences in the crystal structure. These changes typically happen sharply. Doesn't what we're trying to say is when you are changing alpha to beta, all right, it the change is not that significant, but when you are changing alpha or no quartz to tridymite or tridymite to cristobalite, then the change of the variation it's so dramatic. Okay, this means that the transition from one variety to another, like from alpha to beta, occurs quickly and with clear boundaries. Okay. It is quickly and what you call it's quickly with clear boundaries. But when you are changing quartz to tridymite or tridymite to cristobalite, it takes time. It does not happen quickly. But these alphas to betas, it happens quickly. Okay, so you'll agree with me that these are the different temperatures. 573, 870, 1470, at 1705 degrees Celsius. And then now, when you are increasing the temperatures, you are basically changing the crystal structure. Okay, you are changing the crystal structure. For example, alpha quartz, which is trigonal, if you increase the temperature, it will transform into what you call the beta quartz, which is hexagonal. And then if you increase the temperature, it will be hexagonal. And then if you again the crystal cubic, and then if you increase the temperature, now the beta cristobalite, it can withstand those temperatures, and what will happen is it will melt. Okay, so which is why we say in theory at normal pressures, trigonal quartz. Okay, trigonal quartz, obviously it will be alpha quartz, is this one, is the trigonal quartz. Okay, it will transform to hexagonal, which is beta quartz. Okay, So upon further heating, the SiO₂ will transform into hexagonal, or what you call the beta tridymite. And then when you increase the temperature again, it will be like that, and so on and so on, until when the cristobalite can no longer withstand the temperatures you're exposing it to, and then it will melt. Okay, but what we notice is tridymite, all right? Tridymite does not usually form from a pure quartz or pure beta quartz. That's why we say tridymite does not usually not from pure beta quartz. One needs to add trace amounts of certain compounds to achieve this. All right, this is according to Hine in 1994. Okay, so it means the beta quartz to tridymite transition is skipped, and the sequence look like this. So what we're trying to say, remember, here we had beta and then beta quartz and then beta tridymite, and then this beta tridymite to beta cristobalite. But now we are going to skip this beta tridymite. Okay. So the beta quartz to beta tridymite transition is skipped, and the sequence would look like this. That's why from the beta quartz it will be beta cristobalite. Okay, this is because tridymite does not usually form from pure beta quartz. Okay. So you need to add some, trace amount of certain compounds to for you to convert these beta quartz directly to what we call the beta tridymite. Okay, so that's one thing that I wanted to bring to your attention. And then everything, all right. How can I put it? Okay. Before we can enter into these the partial ones, I want to bring to attention that we have what we call that everything here, they depend on what we call the SiK bond. Okay. The transformation, it is controlled by SiO Si bond. Okay, that's basically what's happening. Okay, the the silicon oxygen silicon bond, this would refer to the bond that connect two silicon atoms through the oxygen atoms. Connect two silicon atoms through the oxygen through the oxygen atoms. Okay, so this bond is basically crucial in minerals such as quartz. Okay, where the structure, because we know that in quartz we've got what you call a silicon tetrahedron. Okay, we've got a repeating silicon tetrahedron. Okay, now this silicon tetrahedron, okay, they will basically be linked. This silicon tetrahedron, they are linked by this bond. Silicon tetrahedron, they are linked by this bond. Okay, this bond is very, very, very important. Okay, so it means that this bond, it forms what you call a backbone. It forms what you call the backbone of the crystal structure. It forms a backbone of the crystal structure. Okay, that's one thing that I wanted to bring to your attention. Okay, and then all these bonds, they usually depend on what you call the and what we call the angle. So because sometimes you can have this bond in a straight line, sometimes you can have this bond in this way. So that's what you call the bond angle. Okay, and then this bond angle, it must always be maintained. We want to always make sure that this angle between the silicon between the two silicon atoms connecting through the oxygen is always maintained. All right, why must it always be maintained? Because of it has the um, um, what we call the ideal. It has what you call the ideal bond. These minerals, they've got the ideal bond usually of 144 degrees. All right. The quartz. The quartz, it must always maintain the ideal bond angle of 144. Okay. But obviously, this angle would vary depending on the crystal structure and the temperature, all right? So it will vary depending on the crystal structure and the temperature. But basically, the geometry of this bond, okay, it will impose what you call constraints on how the silicon atoms can arrange themselves within the crystal lattice, okay? So we must always make sure that the bond angle is maintained. Why must it always maintained? To ensure what we call the stability, to make sure that we always maintain what we call the stability of the crystal structure. And obviously, this bond angle will be, altered too much, okay? But can only be altered if the structure becomes open. If you increase the temperature, the angle, it will be altered. Okay, because you are increasing the temperature, it will become altered because now you are making sure that now the atoms, they are further away from each other, now making the structure to become more open. And then if it's becoming more open, this angle, it will be tempered with. That's one thing that I want to bring to your attention. Okay. Now, let's look at also the pressure forms. We've got the silica form or polymorph, which happens at low pressures, which we call it a Coesite. But if you now start to increase the temperatures, you're gonna form what you call the Stishovite. Okay, you're gonna form this mineral called a Stishovite. Okay, Coesite is a high pressure polymorph, of silica that forms under pressures greater than 2 to 3 gigapascals, and the temperatures around 600 to 1,000. Okay, and then this usually you find it in subduction zones where two things get to meet, and then due to difference in densities, the heavier ones, it will subduct. You usually find it there. Okay. Crystal, in terms of crystal structure, the Coesite has a unique crystal structure in which the silicon atoms are arranged by 4 oxygen atoms in a tetrahedral arrangement. We know that because of what you call silicon tetrahedron, okay, or tetrahedron. But unlike quartz, the silicon oxygen tetrahedron in Coesite are more compact, making the mineral denser than quartz. It means that the structure is not open because of the temperature. The temperature does not usually play a major role, but the pressure. So that's why the atoms are usually compacted. Okay. Coesite, it's rare and typically forms during meteorite impacts and or at deeper crustal levels during high pressure and metamorphism, for example, in mantle derived rocks or during the collision of tectonic plates. Okay, so basically, when you increase the pressure, the quartz will undergo a transition into a coesite. Okay. This transition is more important for understanding the metamorphic history of rocks and is often used as the barometer to estimate the pressure conditions of the formation. So when you increase the pressure, you're gonna force the quartz to become unstable, and then it will transform into what you call the coesite. But if you increase the temperature again, the coesite will be transformed into what you call the Stishovite. Okay, so Stishovite, it will occur at super high pressures. Okay, so because it will occur at pressures above those of the Coesite. Okay, the structure of Stishovite is router-like, meaning it has a tetragonal structure okay, where silicon are in close packed arrangement with oxygen atom. This makes this stishovite extremely dense compared to quartz, coesite, and other forms of silica. Okay, so you must always know that um, when atoms are closely packed, you're gonna have what you call high density, okay? Because temperature is not playing a major role here, okay? Temperature is not playing a major role here, but pressure is. And then the more the pressure, the more you are forcing the atom to be, closely packed, okay? You are forcing these things to be closer to one another, okay? But when the temperature is playing a role, you are making these atoms to go further away from each other. So that's why the Stishovite is denser than coesite and the quartz, because of the higher the pressure, the more you are forcing the atoms to be closely packed to one another, okay, or to be closer to one another. Okay, Stishovite forms from coesite at even high pressure. Okay, the transition from coesite to Stishovite involves significant changes in the crystal structure, leading to a denser form of silica. Okay, so that's why Stishovite is highly dense as compared to coesite. But coesite, it will be denser than the quartz. That's where you are playing with the temperature, with the pressure. So that's why if we are looking at this, we know that the forms of pressure, the silica, which they are formed by increase in pressures, is the coesite. Coesite, it forms at when you increase the pressure, the quartz will be transformed into a coesite, and then if you increase the pressure again, the high pressure polymorph, it will be now what you call the Stishovite. And the Stishovite, because of when you're increasing the pressure, you are forcing the atom to be closely packed, That's why the Stishovite, it will have a high density as compared to coesite, and the coesite will have high density as compared to quartz. But when you are now looking at the temperature, all right, when you are looking at the temperature, okay, you are basically making sure now that you are forming what you call the open open structures, okay? So we can never the atoms don't form an open structure at low temperatures, okay? You cannot form but an open structure at low temperatures. Because why not? Okay, because there's no vibrations at low temperatures. The atoms have less thermal energy, and then if they have got less thermal energy, it means they will vibrate less. So if they vibrate less, they don't need much space, because they vibrate less, so they don't need much space between them. Okay, so the crystal lattice will always remain compact, okay, because the atoms they're going to be locked into a position that allow them the silicon oxygen silicon bond, okay, to maintain their ideal geometry. We always want to make sure that now like I've mentioned before, that this bond this bond and the angle, they are very important, because we always want to maintain what you call the ideal geometry. We always want to maintain what you call the ideal geometry. Okay, a certain angle must always be achieved. Okay, so it means at low temperatures, for example, for alpha quartz and for alpha quartz, basically you're gonna have what we call more ordered and tightly packed. Okay, you're going to have the structure is going to be more ordered and tightly packed. So it means the bonds between the atoms are highly stable, are more stable. Okay, that's why you have this more ordered and tightly packed. Okay, it means the atoms, they are arranged in a more orderly and tightly fashion. Okay. But now, if you were to now increase the temperature, like from um, alpha to beta tridymite, okay, what are you doing? Or from tridymite to cristobalite, all right? What are you doing? You are now basically you are increasing what you call the thermal energy. So if you're increasing the thermal energy, the vibration is going to increase. So if vibration is going to increase, think of this. If you plug your kettle, turn it on, and then let's say that kettle has water in it. So if the temperature is low, just after you plugged, or just after you switched the kettle on, you will see that the atoms, they don't have energy. That's why they will just be okay. But if you start to increase energy, then look straight into that kettle, you will see the atoms starting to jump because they are energized now. All right, they are becoming energetic. That's why they start to vibrate. So it's like that. So when you're increasing the temperatures, you are forcing what you call the vibrations to happen because of what you call the thermal energy start to increase. So the vibrations would happen. If vibrations start to happen, you are now, because now the atoms are energetic, they start to move, they start to expand. So what do when they start to vibrate? They basically create space between each other. So you are making now the structure to be open. That's why at high temperatures you are having open structure, making these materials to become, or these silica polymorphs to become less dense. That's why a high temperature polymorph is less denser than the low temperature than the low temperature polymorph. Okay. I hope that makes sense. So know what happens when you change the temperature, and what happens when you change the pressure. Okay. Don't forget that if you, for example, cristobalite, if you increase temperature, okay, then the cristobalite, it will become unstable, and what will happen? It will melt. That's why here you have got this melt zone. All right, it means the cristobalite couldn't survive those high temperatures, and that's why it melted. Okay. As I've mentioned before, that we've got this bond, which is very, very, very important. We always want to make sure that now we maintain what you call the ideal geometry. Okay, so this is the bond which that these bonds connect this bond connects the two. It connects the two Si atoms. It connects the two Si or silicon atoms through oxygen. Through oxygen. So you can see this is silicon atom. They connect these silicon atoms. They are connected through oxygen. That's what you call SiO₂ bond. This is very important, and also the angle. This angle is also important to always maintain what you call the geometry. Because if the angle it can become something else, then now we're not going to be talking about silica anymore. Okay, we're going to be talking about something else. The silica oxygen silicon bond refers to the bond that connects two silicon atoms through oxygen. This bond is crucial in minerals like quartz, where the structure consists of repeating SiO for tetrahedra. Okay, so these SiO4 tetrahedra are linked together via this bond, and this bonding forms the backbone of the crystal structure. This is what I've explained. Okay. This bond is an angle-dependent bond. This bond, it depends on the angle. If it's 180, it will be this straight line. Okay, but if it's 144 or 120, it will be like that. Okay. And it must maintain a specific angle between the two silicon atoms connected by the angle. Like I said, we always want to maintain what you call the ideal geometry. Okay, we always want to maintain what you call the ideal geometry. Okay, this is because the geometry of the bond, it will be imposed, or it will impose what we call this geometry. It will impose what we call okay, let me write here. It will impose what we call the constraints. It will impose what you call the constraints on how the silicon atoms can arrange themselves within the crystal structure. So this the bond is very, 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 very important. Okay. That's why the bond angle must be always be maintained to always make sure that we have what you call the stability of the crystal structure. Okay, this angle must always be maintained. Okay, so that we maintain what you call, or we achieve what you call the stability of the crystal structure. Okay, so if ever you can alter this angle too much, if ever you can tamper with this angle too much, okay, for example, during high temperatures, you are basically tampering with this angle too much. Okay, so the structure will become too open. Okay, and then if the structure is becoming too open, what happens is if the structure becomes too open, what happens is that a mineral will become unstable, and the mineral will lose its structural integrity. Okay, you are forcing the mineral to lose what you call its structural integrity, because of the structure is becoming more and more open. So that's why this bond is very, very, very important. And also the bond angle. Okay. Okay. Atoms don't form an open structure at low temperatures. You can't form an open structure at low temperatures. Okay, because those things, they're going to be highly compacted. Okay, they're going to be closely spaced. All right, but now immediately when you increase the temperatures, you are forcing the atoms to start to vibrate, then moving away from each other. Okay, now making now that particular mineral to become less stable. Okay, or less compacted, and then it will become less dense. That's why we say as temperature increases, the thermal vibrations become more pronounced and the atom need more space. So which can result in the formation of a more open structure, crystal structure. But this openness must still respect the geometry of the covalent bonds, particularly this bond, which determines the limits of how open the structure can become. Because we always want to maintain what you call the ideal geometry. We always want to maintain what you call the ideal geometry. So that's why it's always important to understand these constraints of bond geometry. Okay, so as temperature increases, the atoms in a crystal lattice vibrate more vigorously, and due to the increasing thermal energy. Okay, you are energizing those atoms, and if the atoms have energy, they will start to jump. If they start to jump, it's like they are moving away from each other, creating a space. And then that's why the structure, it will become more open. All right. Okay. So this brings us to the end of our session, what we call the silica polymorphs. So today we've learned that these silica polymorphs, they basically depend on the temperatures and pressures, and now this temperature and pressures, they gonna control the densities of these minerals. All right. For example, when the pressure is high, the atoms are more compacted, and then making that particular polymorph to become more stable and high and more denser. But now at low temperatures, the minerals, because the atoms are closely packed, they do not have what you call the open structure, where in atoms they do not need space between them. And then they are more compacted than the mineral. It will become more denser. But if you increase the temperatures, you're going to have what you call the thermal agitations, and then now there's going to be vibrations, and then now you creating what you call the open structure. Okay, then the more you have got to the open structure, it means the atoms are far away from each other, and then now that thing or that particular mineral, it's going to be or become what you call less denser. So but now we also learned about the importance of what you call the silicon oxygen silicon bond. Okay, that this bond is very, very, very important because of it's the one which it connects what you call the silicon tetrahedron. All right, but this bond must always maintain. It mustn't be altered too much because it must maintain the ideal geometry of the crystal structure of these minerals. So basically that's that for today, and thank you guys for joining us today. We really appreciate your support. But if you haven't yet subscribed to our channel, you are more than welcome to subscribe to our channel so that you get more of the content we always produce in this MG School of Mining and Geology. Okay, and then you know what I'm going to say, that until next time, cheers.